You're listening to the Free Thinkers Club Podcast Network.
What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another episode of All Factors Considered. This is the UFC 259 post show. We recapping the action, and listen, AJ, man, we had some crazy fights on our hands, man. I ultimately let's do our little record recap real quick. I went 3-2 with we had some weird stuff in there. Probably should have been higher, should have been lower, whatever. You went 1-4 on yours. That moves me to 19-24, and it got you at 20-23, man. So regardless of all of this stuff, man, we still more or less are like hovering near that 50% mark. And like I said, that's the very, very coveted mark to want to be at, man. But nonetheless, like I said, these were crazy fights, man. We had 6 upsets in these 15 fights, man. 8 finishes and a disqualification, which is always nice to, kind of sprinkle in there, right? Give the fans something that we haven't seen in a little bit. But first and foremost, man, I just want to make an announcement that says, folks, if you do not watch the prelims, if you were more or less opposed to watching the prelims because you're not that hardcore of a fan, which is totally okay, you know what I mean? That's the name of the game. Sometimes you get in, get out, just see the things that you want to see. I just want to make a recommendation, man. This entire UFC 59 card was incredible, but it started off with 5 finishes on the early prelims. Not even the regular prelims, the early ones that pretty much a lot of the casual fans, they don't tune into. So there's a lot of value there, man. It's free. You didn't have to pay for it, man. It's free, and you can see 5 knockouts or submissions or whatever the case may be. I just wanted to make a little public service announcement right there, man, because I think that some of these fighters, people are seeing these incredible highlights as highlights on YouTube, not actually during the fight, and be a pretty big time, to give them a little bit of love, man. But back to business, AJ, man. Let's more or less get into it, man. You know what I mean? I'll start the clock, and then we'll get straight into assessing some of the damage, man. So let's start off with the big one, man. You know what I'm saying? Jan Blachowicz, 205 champ versus Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, man. Did this go the way that you anticipated? I know we talked about it in the preview show and all that, but seeing it through 5 rounds, what did you think of this performance?
To be honest, Derek, it didn't go at all like I thought it was going to. Izzy looked very calm and reserved and more calculated than I expected him to be. Same thing with Yan. They both seemed very, very calm and didn't want to risk too much for the show. And to me, one of the biggest things that it proved is that weight in fighting doesn't matter at all until you start wrestling. Izzy was doing nice. He was getting touched up, wasn't hurting him at all, doing real fine. Everything was going as planned, kind of piecing him out from the outside, winning rounds. And then he gets taken down, and you see him not be able to move at all. Literally you could hear him at one point grunt and try to force his way out, and just not happening. And to me, it proved that, weight doesn't matter at all until you start wrestling. And in the ground game, you get a big dude on top of you. Can't take him off. You know what you're going to do when he holds you down. What do you think?
Well, I think you got to add to that. I want to add just to that point that you made. Not only was Izzy not able to get down, but I think it's because Blachowicz, he went position over submission. He says, listen, man, I'm going to go do the veteran thing, and I'm going to hold you down on the ground, which is what I thought was the game plan. I thought he was going to implement that a lot earlier in the night, but it actually makes a little bit of sense to kind of catch Izzy off guard. And I don't know if this was in the plan. Obviously, only Jan knows, but to catch him off guard and be like, okay, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to strike with you, and then mix in those takedowns later on in the fight when Izzy was too tired, you know what I mean? It's 4th, 5th round. Anyone going to be tired, but nonetheless, man, listen, I think that it was a very tall task for Adesanya to come in there and dethrone the 205 champ in an impressive fashion. I think it was going to be close regardless. My biggest thing is Jan was able to touch Izzy a lot more than I anticipated. And I do think the thing that we talked about, right, the Vegas cage being a lot smaller than the other octagon, Jan didn't have to chase him down. And that's the thing that for Adesanya, man, his whole thing is let me move backwards like this, do that type of stuff, hands low and all that. And I'm surprised he didn't pay the price for this. But nonetheless, I picked Izzy, you picked Izzy. So we got to eat a little bit of crow, right? We got to sit here and give all respect due to the champion, Jan Blachowicz, with his legendary Polish power. But I will say, Izzy did seem to eat some of his shots very, very well, man. So I want to know, what do you think about the Polish power? Is it for real? Is it still a legend? What do you think?
I think it's still real. I just don't think the Polish power was able to connect. You know what I'm saying? Izzy was just a little too out of range for it and a little too slick to actually get caught flush. Because you're right, he did get caught a couple times. And that was impressive to me, being able to see Jan actually touch up Izzy as much as he did. Because for the most part, the only person that's been able to do that is Kelvin Gastelum. And we haven't seen that happen to Izzy since, because he's grown so much as a fighter. And it was interesting to see. And I really do think it had a lot to do with Izzy being a little flat-footed, coming out to some calm music in the beginning, being real reserved and not really Yeah, and I think a lot of it had to do with how Corey Sandhagen was talking about in the Joe Rogan Experience. He said, I was walking into the Aljo fight super calm, and this dude beat my ass. Now I got to walk in every single fight like I'm about to, actually kill this dude. And with that mentality, I think if Izzy would have had that instead of be the calm tactician, it would have been a lot more exciting fight and a lot more of the way we expected it to go. What do you think?
I'm in pretty much an agreement, man. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to knock the calm approach. And the reason why is because Yan came out very, very calm and relaxed, too. I think the big difference is that Yan's defense, man, that tight guard, you know what I mean? That played out very, very well because Izzy was trying to land question mark kicks. He was trying to do a whole bunch of that, crazy striking. And he said it in the post-fight conference that Jan Blachowicz came out much more precise, much more tentative than he expected because normally Jan would just start swinging and banging. But that goes to show both fighters respected each other. And, it was a great championship match. It was a great main event, man. And for some of the people who's like, oh, it's not the barn burner I expected. It's like, come on, man. Do you think Izzy is going to come up there and not be calculated? You got to be calculated when you're fighting a dude who weighs 20 pounds heavier than you. You know what I mean? This would have been, if Izzy would have got the job done, he would have been the double champ who jumped up the highest in weight in the history of the UFC. So this is obviously a loss on Izzy's record, man, but this does nothing to his stock. You know what I mean? It just goes to show when Conor McGregor, when he did that run, man, Amanda Nunes doing the double champ stuff, man, it doesn't happen all the time, and those are very special athletes, man. But speaking of that, because we'll get into the matchmaking, obviously, in a little bit, you know what I mean? But Amanda Nunes, Megan Anderson, now it makes a little sense why she was like a minus 1,400 favorite, right? I think that we both had to try to do what we could to try to be like, all right, what's the argument for Megan Anderson here? And I went back and I watched the fight again, man, and I slowed it down. I did a little telestration over it. And one thing that I saw is that Megan Anderson, or I should say Amanda Nunes, when she touches people, man, they don't know how to react, man. It's like, what the hell just hit me? Like, stopped everything. What the hell just hit me? But I will say that I was a little underwhelmed by Megan Anderson's performance. I think that the lights might have been a little bit too bright, man. And the reason why is because she just stood there staring in the mirror, fainting. Never let the jab go. Never really let the big punches go. Obviously, you're scared of the power. You're scared to get countered, but you got to go and prove something if you want to actually win the fight. So give me your thoughts on the Megan Anderson performance side of it before we dive into Amanda Nunes' dominance.
Not only were the bright lights of the USC stage super bright, Derek, but also that bright light that she got cracked with from Amanda Nunes. I literally saw the first shot she take, her eyes go from normal to, oh my God, like, what am I facing? And I knew the fight was over. I knew she was going down, and it was exactly what you want to see from a dominant champ like Amanda Nunes, man. She touched her once and literally started looking in that mirror like, oh my God, what in the world am I here now? I'm locked in the cage with this savage lady, and she's going to continue to punch me in the face. It was, like you said, a little underwhelming for Megan Anderson. She didn't get to utilize that jab. She didn't get to utilize her reach. Maybe even a front kick down the middle. Like, your arms are so much longer than your legs, and you already have the reach advantage on her. Just spam that front kick down the middle. You're going to get knocked out anyway. Like, you might as well just try to at least do a little something. And I think Amanda Nunes took it a little easier on her, giving her that arm bar. But it could have been a lot worse for Megan Anderson.
Well, I agree. And I was going to say that to me, this performance put Amanda Nunes in the Khabib category of things, because when we saw Khabib say, you know what, man, this dude Justin Gaethje, his folks are here. I don't want to hurt him too bad. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to break his arm or whatever. I'm just going to put him to sleep. I'm just going to choke him out, right? Nunes, she was in prime ground and pound position. Instead of just beating Anderson's face in until it was a TKO, she decided, you know what I mean? In training, I've been practicing this armbar anyway, so why not? Just get it. If you even saw, Megan Anderson was like saying hi to Nunes' baby after the fight and all that, and I was just like, all right, man, that goes to show that, yeah, you lost the fight and it's all respect after and all of that, but I just think that Megan Anderson needed to come in with that killer mentality, and it wasn't there, and I'm sure it's hard when we was texting back and forth. I said Amanda Nunes has this like evil grin on her face when she's punching you in the face, like she's sitting there like, okay, yeah, you know, like I smell the blood in the water, you know what I'm saying? And it just goes to show, man, I think that she's got to be in true contention for greatest fighter of all time in the UFC, of all time, not just women's, of all time. And I don't know where I stand on that one, because obviously, you know what I mean, we talked about, yeah, for the average man, you know what I mean, they'd be lucky to go the distance with Amanda Nunes, but I don't know, man. In a fantasy world, I would love to see Nunes face off against like a Max Holloway or something like that and just see who wins, you know what I mean? Like, it'd just be crazy, the power versus the speed and pace. I don't know, man.
I don't know if I'd give her to Max Holloway, but I would definitely like to see her beat Triple C's ass. That's for sure.
Yeah, something like that, right? Yeah, they was trying to line that one up. But All right, man. So let's move on to the next one because, like I said, that was so dominant. It wasn't under a round. There's really not much to talk about on that one. Now, this is the big one this is the big controversy. Petr Yan, he basically overwhelms Aljamain Sterling, and it starts putting the beating on him like I was predicting, right? I said as the fight goes longer, man, that's Jan's style. He just wants to get you to get tired a little bit and then start applying that pressure and to start, you know what I'm saying, toying with his food a little bit. That's the big saying about Petr Yan, and I think that this week, man, or at least on Saturday night, he toyed with his food just a little bit too long because he had Aljamain Sterling on his knees. He had his head, and he decided that he was just going to knee his face into the oblivion of the world, man. Sent that man into a new dimension. He couldn't, get back up, couldn't fight, and now we have a new bantamweight champion in Aljamain Sterling, man. First off, Aljamain Sterling, he's not the champion. We know this. You know this. I know this, man. You know what I mean? Petr Yan is the champion. Maybe not officially, but he is the people's champ of the bantamweight division. Now, before we talk about the actual, DQ and get into, like, the mix of that, man, how impressive was Petr Yan's performance to you?
Dude, that was amazing. Like, him even being able to, excuse me, weather the storm of Aljamain Sterling, dude, that was super impressive. They were rolling, they were transitioning. Petr Yan looked very good, man. He looked very good. And even he started a little slow, and Aljo was winning that first. It was either the first or second round. I can't remember at the moment. But he won a round in my book, and it was impressive to see Petr Yan actually have to endure some adversity and overcome that. That to me made him his stock rise up greatly in my book because he was putting it to Aljo. He was putting it to him hard until he decided, I see 3 of these guys' limbs off the ground, but there's still that one on the ground. I'm gonna touch him up.
Yeah, man. I think that Sterling, he got that first round, came out with the same game plan that he did when he fought Corey Sandhagen. He says, I'm just going to take the dude who walks everybody down, and I'm going to walk him down and see how he reacts to it, man. And then Yan, he did the thing, though, that was really smart, man. We saw it earlier in the fight. It was actually the fight of the night by Kennedy and Chukwu. Apologies for butchering the name, but he did the same thing, the shell approach, It's the same thing that Alistair Overeem was doing, but we was clowning on him saying, you can't do that, at least not in the heavyweight division. You can't do that in the heavyweight division. But nonetheless, had that kind of shell approach going, saying, all right, Aljo, and this is what I was thinking too, man, because Petr Yan, he stuffed like, at a certain point in the fight, almost towards the end, he stuffed like 10 of 11 takedowns, man, and that's what's going to get you tired. So Aljo, he gets gas, he's still bucking forward, but you could tell, man, the writing was on the wall, man. The writing was on the wall in that fight, and while it was a valiant effort for Aljamain Sterling, I think that if you can't put Petr Yan on his back and keep him there, you're going to have a tough night, a tough time getting this man out of there, you know what I mean, and becoming the new champion. So, before, like I said, we get into this DQ, man, I want to give just a little further analysis of this, man. What do you think Aljamain Sterling, because if they're going to run this back, what could Aljo have done differently to kind of get an edge on Yan? You know what I mean? Did you see any path to victory that he wasn't quite applying or anything like that?
Now, that's a hard question because I think Yan was winning the majority of every single position. Those trips, those slides where you throw the right foot behind and just throw him down, like that area is where Aljo's supposed to succeed the most. Yeah. And it just wasn't happening, man. And then even in the striking, even in the the distance management, Yan was looking very good. I think the only thing, if there's any way I think Aljo can win, you just got to just keep spamming, just keep the pressure high, because you can't let Yan get off. You know what I'm saying? You can't let him even get rolling, because once he does and he just starts walking you down in that square mode and just keeps piecing you with hands and then trips you and knocks you down to the ground, throws those axe kicks while you're on the ground and literally lets you look down on you while you're on the ground with your back up and legs out in guard, man. It's just a horrible position to be in. And I think the only way Aljo can get past it is just keep spamming attacks. I know it's dangerous and probably not the most advisable thing to do, just keep spamming attacks as you leave your guard open. But he's got to do something different than just let Petr Yan attack and then you attack and then he attack and you attack. And it's just a cat and mouse game where we saw it didn't last long. You know what I'm saying? That it lasted really well for the first round. And then round 2, 3, and then obviously the DQ. But it just wasn't going his way. And I think a whole new shift in technique would probably be best for Aljo. What do you think?
Well, I think that if Sterling would have maybe took the same approach, except stop worrying about the takedowns. You know what I mean? Maybe threaten with them, but stop trying to go all out for this takedown, man, and just stay with the striking. Keep your striking on, because Ray Longo, he said it the best, man. He says, listen, man, the more that you throw, the less Yan throws. It's as simple as that. It's the easy equation, man, because Yan is going to sit back and he's going to shell up and he's going to do stereotypical European boxer style. It's literally that. And that's what I love most about his style, because it's so fundamental and so basic. And so here's the thing about Sterling, right? He uses so much energy. Everything he throws is like, cranked up full, while Yan, he just do footwork, nice, tight. He's not expending too much energy. And in a 5-round fight, man, I think this was kind of the Gilbert Burns thing, where the moment may have been a little bit too big for Aljo too, man. You know what I mean? And it's not saying that he doesn't have the tools to win, but sometimes it's the fight IQ. And that's the thing that's intangible. That's the thing that you can't sit there and write down on a piece of paper or on their stat sheet. Like, this is how high their fight IQ is, man. It just goes to show in the fight. Similarly to the Blachowicz versus Adesanya, being able to just put him down on the ground and keep him there. That's fight IQ right there. But nonetheless, man, Petr Yan, he says, hey, sorry, you know what I mean? I need you in the head. I ran it back, man. So like what we're saying is Khabib texted Cormier or whatever. Like, it was like, no, you got to understand, in Russian, his corner told him, throw the knee. But in English, very audibly, he says, just punches. That's what the corner is yelling. And then Petr Yan, he like says something in Russian, looks over, and then just cranks that knee, and just like I said, puts Aljamain Sterling into the oblivions of the realms of the depths and stuff like that. So it was clearly intentional. It was clearly a disqualification. But do you think that this should have been all right, tally it up to who you had it at this point, and then winner is like the person who was winning at that point of the fight? Or do you think it should have been a no contest? Or do you think the DQ was truly deserved?
That's very hard, Derek. I've actually been battling this one in my head, because me as a fighter, I wouldn't want to lose or win that way. It's just because, like you said, Jan's still the people's champ. Everybody still knows that you're wearing fool's gold. And that's not something you want. You want the actual hardcore proof. You know what I'm saying? Should it have been just a no contest? I don't know, man. You cheated. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, there's basically 2 rules. Don't bite this dude. Don't kick him when he's down. Yeah. And that's what you did. You knee him in the face. One of the most devastating shots I've ever seen land was when a dude is on the ground and you knee him in the face. You're literally like, your leg is so strong and your knee is so hard that it's you cheated. You cheated. You know what I'm saying?
So let me pause you just for a quick second, man. Let's take this and let's compare it to Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith, right? Because this is the perfect parallel example. Do you think now, in revisionist history, looking back at it, Anthony Smith should have been like, sorry, I can't continue, and we would have had a new light heavyweight champion? Because obviously it's not the honorable way, right? But at the same time, Anthony Smith hasn't been anywhere as close to that light heavyweight championship as he was at that moment. And we don't know if he'll get there again. So it's like, for Aljo, who's to say that if he would have been like, oh yeah, you know what I mean, I can go, and then clearly would have lost the fight, especially after getting rocked like that. And then it's like, okay, well, you're going to have to string together another 5-6 wins if you want another crack at the belt. You know what I mean? Like, who's to say that doesn't happen? So what do you think? Just, it's not like taking a dive dude literally got kneed in the face, but what do you think?
I mean, as a publicist and as an entertainer, yeah. I say take that cash, brother. Like, at the end of the day, dollar, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But that's hard, man. That's a hard one. It's inconclusive. Like, I don't really know. Yes and no. You know what I'm saying? That's one of those weird gray areas where you gotta do you, because it literally could change your life. You start getting pay-per-view points. You start getting pay-per-view money. You get the crowd recognition. You're feeding your family for years now. Or, there's the opposite. Yeah.
It's the glory versus the finance. You know what I mean? So it's like saying I'm going to take the tried and true hardcore MMA fan approach versus, listen, this is a business. This is entertainment. And I have a limited span to the career where everyone has a short span in terms of how high of a level they could compete at and perform at, man. So I think ultimately, the worst move was that they interviewed Aljo, had him crying and stuff in the interviews and stuff. They had a rule that says you do not interview knocked out fighters, but I think they had to. This was a rare event because it was a championship and we had a new champion and all that, but immediately running it back. But I do have to point out, Corey Sandhagen, man, he's the biggest loser of UFC 259, dude, because now he has to fight. So we'll talk about it a little bit later. later, but he has to fight TJ Dillashaw now so he can get a title shot. And then once he fights that, he still might not even get the title shot depending on who wins versus Yan versus Sterling. So if Yan wins, they could very easily say, okay, well, the first fight was a DQ, Sterling wins, I win, rubber match. Now Sandhagen is like, all right, do I have to move up a weight class to get a fucking title shot? What are we doing here? So I feel really bad for Corey Sandhagen, man. And I will say that this is the first time in UFC history that a championship was turned over from one champion to the challenger via disqualification. So this was literally a historic mistake on Petr Yan's corner. I don't know, on him, on his corner. I don't really want to assign blame to one person, so I'm just going to say the whole camp, you guys need to just do a little bit better job next fight, man. Don't knee him when you down and you got the fight easy, basically. At least that's what I saw. So let's run through these last two ones, man. Islam Makhachev, man. Khabib Jr., Khabib 2.0, faced off against Drew Dober and put on a classic Khabib performance, man. If this is true, if this is if Khabib really thinks that this is the next prodigy, the next line of the, Nurmagomedov lineage, I guess you could say, you know what I mean? If this is the next guy, he looks legit, dude, and I think that he needs to fight for a title because I don't know who's going to be able to stop that wrestling approach, man. Drew Dober, like I said, he's a two-time amateur Muay Thai champion. You know what I mean? Dude, striking is legit, but you can't hit nobody if your back is, you know what I mean, on the mat the entire fight. So how dominant was Makhachev, and especially with this win over Dober, where does he go next?
Man, extremely dominant. I was hyping up Dober way too much, man. He literally got out there and couldn't do anything. Even when he was touching him up, the Makhachev's striking looked way better. It looked way more crisp, way more fluid, and he was flowing, man. He was flowing very well. And once I saw Dober get his legs like literally locked up in between of Makhachev's Khabib style, I knew. I was like, all right, this is over for my boy Dober, and on to the next, I guess, man. And really, Makhachev just proved that he is that supreme athlete that we're all expecting him to be and that Khabib hyping him up for. And it's going to be exciting to see where this dude goes, because if he does get to the upper echelon of the division, he's going to be there for a long time. His whole game is very well-rounded and very, very sharp and precise, and he's good, man. It's gonna be very interesting to see. What do you think?
Well, would you argue that this is basically like I don't want to keep using Khabib as the example, so I'll use Petr Yan, right? His whole thing is that over 5 rounds, it's really hard to beat him at the style that he fights at. For Islam Makhachev, over 5 rounds, it's going to be really tough to win rounds against this dude if all he has to do is say, I'm just going to take you down, man. You might be having success on the feet. Well, guess what? I know a million foot trips. I know how to get you off balance. I'm going to put you in that Dagestani handcuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to lock you up and I'm just going to start spamming. I'm going to switch to the back. I'm going to go to full mount. I'm going to do whatever I want to you. And I would really like to see him fight because, forgive me if I'm wrong, man, because I'm off the top of my head. I don't really know. Beneil Dariush, lightweight, right? I don't know why I'm blanking on this. Yes. It'd be interesting to see Makhachev versus Dariush. That'd be an interesting matchup, just in terms of, we'll get to the matchmaking in a second, but in terms of just like that kind of like rolling around, see who has that real indomitable will. Listen, man. Makhachev is a scary guy. Once again, this was basically like a Nunes performance, man. He ended up finishing Drew Dober, which is very, very impressive with an arm triangle, man. But it wasn't a real arm triangle. It was just shoulder pressure. You just choked him out with his shoulder, dude. Like that's what I'm talking about, man. And Josh Thompson, I'm a big fan of the Weigh In podcast with Big John McCarthy and Josh Thompson. He talks about how he trains with Makhachev, and people don't understand. This dude is strong as hell for 155, man. So domination of a performance, man. And then I guess when we hit this last bout right here, man, this was the most underwhelming fight of the card, right? Thiago Santos, Maheta facing off against Aleksandar Rakic, man. But this is kind of what I called, right? Is this not what I predicted? I said sometimes, man, you get these two powerful ass dudes, these two dudes who can just knock anybody out, right? Both of them have 10 plus knockouts on their record. You just start staring in that mirror, man. You start looking at the pictures and you start saying, like, I really would prefer not to get knocked the fuck out right now by this guy standing in front of me. And that's what we saw. Now, it was, like I said, it was an underwhelming performance, but Rakic, he did what he needed to do to get the win. He just outpointed him, did just enough each round to win the round. And Joe Rogan ripped him. Cormier ripped him. Dana White wasn't happy about this, man. Nobody was happy. But at what point do you separate entertainment from getting the job done, because if Rakic did, I'm going to do the entertaining thing and I get knocked out, now you get sent back. Now you're not number 4 anymore. Now you might go down to, you know, whatever number you go to, but you might not ever get a shot against Jan Blachowicz. But Rakic, he's in very, very prime position to get that title shot here in the next couple months or whatever the case may be. So first of all, opening up for a pay-per-view, do you think you have to really perform like that? You know what I mean? Opening up a pay-per-view?
I don't think only just opening up a pay-per-view. I think you always have to perform. Okay. Because if you don't, man, it does hurt your stock with the matchmakers. They may not hurt your stock with the fans and with your, you know, positioning and ranking and all this stuff, but the matchmakers aren't going to want to, if they keep seeing, you know, this kind of fight, Santos versus Rakic, or even Lewis versus Ngannou, like if that keeps happening in your fights, nobody's going to want to watch you. And at the end of the day, you know, this goes back to the same thing with the Yan and the Aljo fight. They're prize fighters. At the end of the day, they're prize fighters. They're fighting for a money. They're fighting for a check. Entertainment be gone, man. I'm trying to feed my family. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be the next, you know, CTE case, you know, Aaron Hernandez going crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a future for everybody, and you don't want to just get KO'd like crazy, but at the same point, you still got to make your way up in the organization and you know, do all that stuff. So it's hard to say. It's you don't want these fights on your record because you don't want to be remembered for them, because that memory will fade very fast. But if you remember for knocking people out and doing all that stuff, and even if you do go out in your shield pretty often, man, you earn a lot of respect from a lot of the fans. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm basically with you, man. I do think that we need to give a lot more respect towards the actual sport. Like, these dudes want to win a championship, as opposed to they don't want to just sit there and, you know, do the entertainment thing if it's not going to cost them, especially if they're not getting paid what they maybe feel that they should pay. And I'm sure Aleksandar Rakic, he might not be getting paid what he deserves to get paid, because he's still more or less, you know, breaking out of that prospect, you know what I mean, category, whatever the case may be. But nonetheless, man, that was the main card for UFC 259, man. I would have to say the prelims probably did steal the show this time around, man, but I still think it was a great card overall. The red corner, aka the A side, had 8 wins. The blue corner, aka the B side, had 7 wins. This was a very, very even fight, even card overall, man. But let's do a little bit of matchmaking, man. How about that, man? So let's just hit these. You know what I mean? A lot of these are very simple. I think this was very easy to matchmake on this card, man, because we're gonna talk about the champ first. You know, Jan Blachowicz. There's a very clear person he called out already. He wants to fight him. Glover Teixeira. He weighed in as a backup for this fight. And I think that's the fight that really makes the most sense. I think anything else would be an injustice right now to the light heavyweight division. So I'm going to go Blachowicz versus Teixeira as the match that I want to see next for that 205 strap. What about you? You got anything else besides that, or does that pretty much make sense?
No, I think that's the only fight to make. Glover's been on a tear. We obviously saw Blachowicz do really well, you know, then and Glover's been deserving of this shot for quite a while now, man. He keeps getting overlooked, and I do think it's time for him to get the shine he deserves, man. He's been an old dog in the game, and I think that's the only fight to make.
Yeah, I mean, what else could you do, man, at this point, right? I'll tell you, you know, and I think now that Izzy is out of the picture, this is the best thing for the division right now because we can actually get something going, right? But at the end of the day, I think Ankalaev, he's going to be creeping up there pretty soon for a title shot. But nonetheless, man, Blachowicz, he's got his work cut out for him, right? Teixeira, if he gets past that, then it looks like Rakic. And if he gets past Rakic, Ankalaev, that's murderer's row, man. He's not going to have an easy time defending that belt. But, you know, that's why they call you the champion, right? Because you're better than everybody else. So that one makes sense to me. I think that was pretty easy, man. Now for this one, it was really hard for me because Amanda Nunes, man, who does she fight at 145? I say this, end the division. First off, there's no rankings. You have like 4 featherweight fighters in the UFC right now in terms of the women's division. End the division. Nunes, get ready to retire here soon, or just hang on to that, you know, bantamweight belt, or because you literally can't go any higher. I don't think there's any promotion anywhere where you can go higher than 145 right now. But nonetheless, man, how about 135, man? What makes sense to you? She's already basically cleared out this division too. I do want to make note that Juliana Pena, who's ranked like number 5 right now in the division, her scheduled fight with Holly Holm has been canceled because Holm got injured. So Pena is calling out Nunes. I don't necessarily see that happening, but I will say, I think that some contenders are going to have to fight each other to then determine who gets to fight Nunes, right? So what do you think about maybe Jermaine Durandami versus Yana Kunitskaya or something like that to determine, like, okay, you know, Nunes already beat Durandami. She already beat Holmes. She's already beaten, you know, all these people. What do you think? Does anything stand out to you for this matchup?
I definitely think you're right in the fact that some of the contenders are going to have to fight each other because that's the only way, man. I agree 100% on the 145-pound division. I think it's done. Like, she's
Yeah.
literally cleared it out. Nobody else can go there. And I think because she's not having to cut down, it makes it a lot harder for the women. You know what I'm saying? They actually have to go up to the weight class. But personally, for me, what I was thinking is who in the world can fight Amanda Nunes? And she already beat her one time, but I think you give Shevchenko the chance again, see if she's grown as a fighter, especially in the 135-pound division, or you throw Irina Aldana at her. Now, I think either of those fights, they're going to be a very uphill battle for either of those fighters fighting Nunes. But I think those are the only real options in my book, man. You either give her to Shevchenko, give her to the bullet, or I guess give the bullet to her, or Irina Aldana, whoever thinks can fend off the lioness a little longer. What do you think?
Well, I like that one, man. I like the Shevchenko matchup, and I think that's the only one that like really, really, really makes sense. But I still think Nunes is going to very easily win that fight, and the reason why is because Shevchenko, man, her thing is timing and countering, right? And in her division, it works out very well because she's faster than everybody. She hits very, very hard at her division. But when you're fighting someone like Nunes, who even at 135 just carries so much power, it's just hard, man. Especially with the ground acumen that Nunes has. I think she'd give Irina Aldana. I think Aldana doesn't get it done on the feet. I think she gets put on her back, and that's the end of the fight. Holly Holm, I think she'll probably get knocked out again. So we could do Shevchenko, but I don't want to see it because I respect Shevchenko too much as a fighter. I don't even want to see her take that L. She's already lost once. She can try to run it back, but this is the way that I look at it in terms of the hierarchy of the GOATs of the women's division, right? Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she was considered to be the GOAT for a long time, right? Joanna Jędrzejczyk can't beat Valentina Shevchenko, but Valentina Shevchenko could beat Jędrzejczyk. Now, Valentina, she can't beat Nunes, but Nunes could beat, you know what I'm saying, Valentina. So ultimately what it comes down to is like Nunes is just the undisputed GOAT at this point, man. You know what I mean? If no one could touch her, if she's, we're doing MMA math, you know what I mean? I think that Nunes wins that every single time, man. So this is really hard to you know what I'm saying, ultimately matchmake, I think. So yeah, we go with a couple winners. We can go with, you know what I mean, Shevchenko. Maybe if Juliana Pena wants to get her shot, see what she could do on the ground, but I think she gets knocked out too. I don't think the stand-up is we just saw Nunes is just a different level, man. It's no disrespect to these fighters. She's just next level. So this one is a little more interesting. Islam Makhachev, right? Islam Makhachev at 155, man. I'm going to give you three choices right here. You tell me which one makes the most sense. Tony Ferguson, ranked number 5, to go hand in hand with that Khabib drama, you know what I mean? Khabib giving Tony to the little brother, you know what I'm saying? And letting him handle business, right? Michael Chandler, who Charles Oliveira does not want to fight. Clearly, right? So it's like Michael Chandler, maybe give him this one to determine, all right, are you ready for the belt? We'll give you to this young phenom. Or RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, sitting at number 7 in the division, man. Which one of those fights, if you had to choose, would you choose ultimately?
If one of those, I'd have to say Chandler. I'd have to say Michael Chandler just for the ground game, just because we've seen that Makhachev can just handle people on the ground. And the only way we're going to see actually how good combat sambo is versus wrestling is given to Chandler. I mean, everybody's been hyping up the ground game of Chandler. I think it's time we see what that's about. Personally, though, I agreed with you on the Dariush. Yeah. I think we give him the Dariush. I think that's a great fight. Either that or another one I had was Dan Hooker. Let Dan Hooker get back at it. But personally, I think either best fight situation, both for Makhachev, which I think is a little too high for him, but we'll see, is the Michael Chandler fight. Give him to Michael Chandler, that'd be impressive. Either him or Dariush, I'm sold either way.
Yeah, man. I think the Michael Chandler fight makes a lot of sense, man. Just because it's like you got the big win over Dan Hooker. But let's see, man. You're talking about this great wrestler, right? And they're talking about how nobody in the division has as good wrestling as Michael Chandler. Everyone's saying Michael Chandler is just the best wrestler in the division. Let's find out. Makhachev is a pretty damn good wrestler, man. So let's find out, bro. But I don't think Chandler would want to fight him. I don't think it would make sense. I don't think Tony would want to fight him. I think RDA would be the only one who's game enough to fight him. But I think this is a lose-lose for all of them, man. You don't really win much if you beat them because you're supposed to beat them and you lose a tremendous stock. Like Drew Dober is probably going to lose a tremendous stock. Right now, he's already not ranked. He was just in the rankings, but I think it's going to go right back to, maybe not deeper down the rankings, but I think, listen, man, Islam, it's just next level. One of those guys, man. I don't want to hype him up too much yet. You know what I mean? I want to see him really, really, really prove himself against someone who's high up in them rankings. He says he deserves someone in the top 5. So let's see, man. And then, okay, let's hit this last one, or I guess I got one bonus one I want to run by really quickly quickly. But for Rakic, man, this is the same one where I think this is very, very easy, man. I think the winner of Dominic Reyes versus Yuri Prochazka, number 3 versus number 5, I think the winner of that, you give him to Rakic, and then the winner of that fight then fights for the title. And I don't really see anywhere else you can go. I don't see why he would sit there and fight somebody ranked lower than him at this point. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's who I had, man. Dominic Reyes, after the Yuri Prochazka, or I guess the winner of that fight. Yeah. I had him just fighting Dominic Reyes because I just who I wrote down. But yeah, I agree with the Prochazka, that whole thing, man. How that unfolds. Yeah.
It was easy, you know what I mean? This wasn't a great performance. Maybe if he knocked him out in tremendous fashion, then I'd be able to change some things up or something. But this really makes the most sense to me. So this is the sleeper to make things interesting, right? Dominic Cruz, right? Very impressive win over Casey Kenny. It was closer than I thought it was, man. That split decision, I don't really know about that. But anyways, man, a win is a win is a win. And that's what we, take care of over here. So Dominic Cruz, man, finally got his first win since, I think, 2016, man. So I don't know if he's ready to fight for a title or anything like that. I don't think that at all, actually. But I do think it would be interesting to see him fight against either Pedro Munoz, ranked number 8 in the division right now, or Marlon Moraes, who's on a pretty legit losing streak right now. I think that could be very, very interesting on both accounts, man. Do you have anybody you think that you would like to see Dominic Cruz fight, man?
I was thinking Cody Garbrandt. Garbrandt.
Let's save that one though, right? Let's save it for one more fight after Cruz, because I think that would build it up enough to where it's like, all right, bro, you took his belt. Now, let's see if he can get that one back. It's funny. I was looking at that one, but I think Cody Garbrandt is just a little too high. I think Dominic Cruz needs just one more good win, and then you can line that one up, and you can make that a pay-per-view. I'd pay for that.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
Yeah, man. So, hell yeah, man. First off, I'm just glad because, listen, folks, this was one of my best bets, Dominic Cruz over Casey Kenny, man. I thought this was easy money. I thought the odds makers are disrespecting an old-time legend, and we saw it, man. There were 6 upsets out of these 15 fights, man. So, there's a lot of value to be had, man. And, we'll talk about that on a later date on the betting show. Come mess with me on Wednesdays and stuff, folks. But before we get into this last topic for the word on the street, man, I do want to note, folks, UFC Vegas 21 is coming up next. We're going to see the return of Leon Edwards versus Bilal, remember the name, Muhammad. And it's going to be really interesting, man. We got a heavyweight bout. We got a 205 bout, 185 bout, 2 170 bouts, 1 lightweight, 2 145s, 2 135s, 2 125s, and 2 115s, man. So they're spreading it out through all of the weight classes for this next card, folks. So you should tune in. And I also want to especially point out there, Manel Kape, man. He makes his return very, very quickly, man. Coming off of his first UFC loss, he makes his return. He's 15-5, facing off against a dude named Matthews Nikolai, who I have no idea who this dude is, but I'm going to have to do a little bit of homework. We'll talk about that next week. But AJ, man, let's conclude this thing out with the word on the street, man. So, one championship. They are to debut live on a primetime event series on TNT on April 7th following AEW Wrestling, right? So TNT is the new home for One Championships, man. And what I love about it is not just going to be MMA. It's not just going to be kickboxing. It's not just going to be Muay Thai, but it's going to be a good mix of everything, man. So Bellator now has a home at Showtime. One has a home at TNT. The UFC is the UFC, man. What are your thoughts right now for the state of mixed martial arts? I feel like this thing is really, really making a big stride right now.
Bro, I'm hyped. And that's exactly what it is the rest of the MMA community's finally getting some notoriety, man. I'm super hyped for the stars that it's about to bring out and the future matchmaking that can come from it, man. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'd have to agree with you. And I think that, hopefully that we're seeing this big rise in the rest of the kind of the global MMA scale coming into at least American audiences. Because, the rest of the world, they're already tuned in to those fights and whatnot. And they even try to tune into the UFC fights. But I would like to see, hopefully, this doesn't seem too unprofessional in terms of MMA, but I would like to see some crossover events, if that's what you're talking about, right? Some like the biggest star of Bellator or the biggest star at One. Or what about Mighty Mouse, Demetrius Johnson makes his return for a crossover bout versus the champ at in the UFC? Or what if Henry Cejudo came back to the UFC, got that strap back, won a couple fights, and then they make the crossover for Demetrius Johnson versus Henry Cejudo, champion? I don't know, man. There's a lot of options. I know I get a little excited over this stuff, but hey, man, listen, MMA is flourishing right now, folks. And if you go back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, man, you'd be so shocked to see the state of the MMA world today. You know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, man, and I guess this last piece of news is something that we touched on earlier, man. We'll conclude out with this. Corey Sandhagen, man. Corey Sandhagen he has announced on the Joe Rogan podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, that he's in talks to fight the #1 contender in the bantamweight division at TJ Dillashaw. Or I guess this fight would determine who the number one contender is to fight for the belt. Now, like we said, Corey Sandhagen is the unluckiest person in MMA right now. Do you think that TJ Dillashaw, seeing where we're at right now in terms of, you know what I mean, the bantamweight title picture and all of that good stuff, do you think TJ Dillashaw deserves this shot? I have to keep going back to it. I'm like, does he deserve to just come straight into the, you know, number one contender fight to fight for a title? Yeah, he was the champion, but you also cheated one of the worst. You committed one of the most egregious sins of MMA that you possibly can. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard because his history, yeah. And I mean, you come back, he did his time, man. He did, you know what I'm saying? He served his punishment. We're going to give Yan an instant rematch after he cheated.
Yeah, but I think you could put the scale of I'm taking EPO versus I need a dude in the head illegally. Like, because if we're playing by that rules, then Jon Jones is, Jon Jones, actually, I don't even want to go there because we got the supplements and we got him doing the 12-6, which is also illegal, where he, you know, that was his one loss on his record. But if we're counting, we can't count an illegal technique to the same severity as I literally cheated so that I could potentially compete with these people. You know what I mean? Like that's a different thing. And we don't know. Cody Garbrandt, he had been calling out TJ for cheating like years before he got caught. So who knows? Maybe his entire championship run was off of, you know what I mean, taking PEDs or whatever the case may be. But I guess that's neither here nor there. I mean, it actually is here because that's what we're talking about right now. But ultimately, I just feel bad for Corey Sandhagen, man. Give me some words on Corey Sandhagen. Do you think that if he doesn't become the champion, do you think that this is to blame? This would be the reason why? It's because of all of this mix up with trying to get TJ in, and then no, now you got to fight this. Now then we had this illegal strike, and now you have to run it back a rubber match. Like, what do you think would be the story of Corey Sandhagen's career if he never wins the championship?
I think the only reason Corey Sandhagen isn't fighting for the championship is because he didn't take his shot once he head kicked Marlon Moraes. If he would have said, give me Yan right now, they're not fighting, and he would have actually taken that shot instead of saying, well, Aljo's up next, I think his whole story would have changed, man. He screwed himself, you know what I'm saying? And now we've seen the aftermath of it. He's back again. He's going to have to wait 6 months to a year to actually get some shine, man. And I think that would have been the ultimate crux of his goals.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, nice guy finishes last in this sport. It sucks that it has to be that way because you look at Wonder Boy too, man. You're like, dude, if you just maybe cut the nice guy act, maybe that's who you are. Maybe you are the nicest motherfucker in the game, right? Not the BMF, but the NMF, the nicest motherfucker, right? If you're that guy, man, maybe that's who you are, but you got to put on the persona. Colby Covington didn't get to where he was at, even though he was starching fools until he started doing the MAGA stuff, until he started being the heel that nobody liked, right? Because why? It sells pay-per-views. And that's the big reason I think Dana White was even in consensus with this, is that Corey Sandhagen, even though he's kneeing Frankie Edgar in the face, knocking out Marlon Moraes with a spinning, you know, whatever kick, he just doesn't put asses in seats, you know what I mean? He doesn't sell those pay-per-views. So perfect timing, man. That's it. We're right at the conclusion of our time right here, man. And ultimately, oh, there we go. I did it again. All right, we're back. But ultimately, man, I'm gonna fix that. We'll fix that one of these days, man. We ain't gonna keep ending early, but that's it, man. That's the recap of UFC 259, man. But like I said, this next card, UFC Vegas 21, is arguably not quite as stacked, but damn near just about as stacked as this card. 14 bouts announced so far, so you know we're gonna have to do our homework, report back to you guys over on Friday with our preview show as we do every single week, man. But nonetheless, man, AJ, pleasure and honor breaking down the fights with you as always, man. Folks, give us a follow on Instagram, All Factors Considered. I'm gonna say it again, hit the little bell notification icon that lets you know when our episodes drop somewhere, anywhere around here, somewhere in the vicinity. But nonetheless, folks, that's all we got for you this week. Until next time, peace.